I would say definitely. I will say I was shocked when I realized how much pharmacists who work in the industry were making, because when I moved, I knew I just wanted to make the move. I'd looked into salaries, but I wasn't, it wasn't a priority at the time. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be a priority for people now, because I understand we're living in a completely different world now than we were 8 years ago. It's definitely worth it, in my opinion. I think also people should consider, like, with different companies, there are different pay rates. With different roles, there are different pay rates. If you're working as a permanent employee versus working as a contract employee, there are different rates as well. So I think there are multiple factors that play into that. But I want to say, in almost every single iteration, it's worth it, in my opinion. I think your career should pay well, because then you feel fulfilled. And I think when you're not worrying about anything else, you can do your job really well. When you're not worried about what's going to be my next move, where am I going next, because what I'm getting paid here isn't enough. That helps you to kind of move forward and make those decisions from a place that isn't purely financially motivated, when you feel like you're being fairly paid for the job that you're doing. So my answer to that is yes, very much so.
And what does it look like in terms of, because obviously there are people who go into positions who maybe they're okay staying at the same position for, X number of years, but some people actually want to, kind of progress quite quickly. What does that look like? Because the other thing as well that I want to add into there is, one of the things that stopped me, for example, when I first wanted to go into industry and was thinking about it back when I was in the UK, was people always say, oh, well, you're going to have to take a salary drop. Initially it's going to be a bit of a drop, especially because I've heard stories like pharmacists have to do things like drug rep positions for a while and maybe go around to, surgeries and hospitals, and that might be a bit of a drop in terms of what you're getting paid as a clinical pharmacist. So does that pay drop happen? For sure. And secondly, how can people transition, or progress quickly if they want to?
So two parts to that question. So I think, does the drop always happen? The answer to that is no. The drop didn't happen for me, but I did go into a contract position. So I didn't have the security of a job that if they made me redundant after 2 years, I'd get a payout. I didn't have the car allowance. I didn't get shares and that sort of thing that people do normally get when they get an industry role. So I didn't have those things. But even with that said, it was worth it for me. So I didn't take that drop. But I do know people that have taken the drop. But usually, from what I've seen with the people I work with, that drop usually balances itself out within a year or two. Regarding things like working as a sales rep, I have seen people that have done it to get their foot in the door, but usually if you're determined, you can, get out of that. I will also say there are multiple sales rep positions that I've seen that do get paid more than either community or hospital pharmacists. There are also things like bonuses, car allowances, people get shares in companies. So I think there are multiple benefits, and I think people need to look at the whole package as opposed to just looking at one single number, which might not matter if you have to, for example, go into the hospital or the community pharmacy 5 days a week, when you can work from home or just work around one certain area a couple of days a week as well. So I think looking at the whole package, that usually balances itself out as well.
Yeah, and the flexibility, I feel like, I've heard obviously there's a travel component for some people who like to travel, but also there is the part of being able to work from home as much as you want to, or depending on the company, right, which obviously makes it easier for people who are, working parents, or who may have other requirements in terms of not being able to go into work every day. So bring this conversation to a close, I just wanted to ask in regards to pharmacists now, they've listened to your interview, they're interested in going into this position and they want to take the next steps. What kind of job titles should I be looking for as a pharmacist who maybe have worked in community for 8 years and I'm ready to take that leap? What are the job titles I should look for, and where should I look? Should I do Indeed or should I do LinkedIn? What are the places, or where are the places I can find those positions?
Great question, because I get asked this a lot. So my number one recommendation is medical information, and it's for a couple of reasons. I started in medical information, and I think that gave me an amazing foundation for my career in industry. It gave me networking skills because I spoke to so many people within the company I worked for then. But I also think it's an easier link between either community and hospital, because hospital departments have medicines information departments. So for me, that's very easy to move across if you're in a hospital position. Also, community pharmacy, you're constantly giving information about medicines to people. So I think it's about, again, like sharpening those skills that you've already got and transferring them to a medical information position. So you can be a medical information specialist, medical information assistant, medical information scientist, anything to do with medical information, I advise people to move into. Then you mentioned sales reps as well. So I do know some people who are pharmacists who have worked as sales reps. I do get a lot of pharmacists saying they don't want to do that, but that's also an option. And then something else for people who like traveling but want to stay on the medical side of things, there's a position called an MSL, and that's a medical science liaison. Those positions are not promotional, so their job is not to sell the drug. Yes, they work for the pharmaceutical company, but their job is more to encourage conversation, encourage links in that therapy area. So MSLs, can be doctors. Usually I've seen PhD holders, I've seen pharmacists become MSLs, and they do get to travel around kind of their area, and they do speak to consultants, but they're speaking more on a peer-to-peer basis. They're speaking more to people who have similar, especially educational backgrounds to them, and saying kind of, what's happening in the industry, what new breakthroughs are coming out now. And they're not just getting insights, but it's a peer-to-peer relationship that they're building. And I think people overlook that, because as soon as they see you have to travel, they assume it's a sales rep position, and they're completely different. And I think it's important that people note that as well. The positions I've mentioned, apart from the sales rep, of course, are medical affairs positions, and I kind of focus on those because that's where I have experience. But also they're like pharmacovigilance roles as well, and that's looking at drug safety. So when a drug is prescribed or used by a patient, if they have any side effects, they'll usually report that to the pharmacovigilance department of a pharmaceutical company. And obviously that department collates these. And if they're finding out that, for example, 10% of patients that are using this are actually getting this drug, then they can, of course, update the drug label for that and make sure that it's clear and patients are using the drug safely, because their prescribers know that this is actually a side effect. So pharmacovigilance is also somewhere good to look. Regulatory departments are also somewhere good to look as well for people. And just because somebody went to university to study pharmacy doesn't mean that they don't enjoy or are good at selling. So I also think becoming a sales rep is also an option for people who think that they'd enjoy that in their career, and not just as a stepping stone to get into industry. I know some people who are pharmacists who are lifelong sales representatives. It's good, you get to meet people. You'll become a specialist almost at the drug that you're working in. There are good bonuses from what I've heard as well. So I think people need to look at what they think they'll enjoy, and then what skills they have and what kind of role that fits as well. That's so key. I think the other thing I wanted to just chip in there, as you were talking, I was just thinking about people who are also in positions where they want to move countries. And obviously one of the things that can be hard sometimes, I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be wrong in this, there are some positions within pharma companies where you don't necessarily have to be a licensed pharmacist, but have to obviously have a pharmacy degree. So I know one of the things that people struggle with coming into a new country, for example, is getting licensed in that new country. And if you're someone who maybe you don't want to go through the stress of some of those exams, and maybe you have some pharma experience in your previous country, you can also move into the pharmaceutical industry, because I have seen lots of people do that, especially those who move from Nigeria to Canada, for example, or to the US. It's an easier way for them to get into that space, without having to do that. My last question for you is, and I know lots of people are probably, eager to know this. You obviously have, this business where you basically share your expertise. You help people to get into these positions and roles, and you kind of give people tips. So how can people reach out to you? How can people find you? And what are the platforms where you're available for people to reach out to you? Lovely. So I think the easiest way to get to me is through email, and the email address is info @theindustrialpharmacist.co.uk. I'll get back to you within a couple of days there. You can also message on LinkedIn, which is getting very busy at the moment, so email is probably the easiest way to get through to me. The Industrial Pharmacist also does have a LinkedIn page, but that's worth a follow as well, because I do post random jobs on there that would be good for people who are either just moving into industry or who've had their first or second role in industry and kind of want to develop a little bit further. I also have an Instagram account where I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing just yet with it. I'm trying to give people
and that's okay.
a bit more insight into what that is. So I might challenge myself to do a day in the life of a final signatory at some point this year, just so people get a bit more of an idea. But you can follow me on Instagram. But if you actually want to get into contact and send messages, emails are definitely by far the quickest way that you'll get a response.
Okay, and I'll put all those details in the description box below. Mariam, thank you so much for your time. Is there any kind of like last words or encouraging, tips that you want to give any pharmacist or even student who's looking to pursue this particular sector?
Yes, definitely. It's don't give up. I'm famous for saying on conversations that I have like this that I applied to 46 jobs and then I got a job, but the job I actually took was the one my friend got me anyway. So the 46 plus the one I got didn't even matter. And there were times where it got, really discouraging, and I just kind of thought, am I ever going to get there? But just keep going. But wherever you are, make sure you're doing that job to the best of your ability. So Absolutely. You're taking all the opportunities that you need to take, but you're doing your job well, because like I said, networking doesn't just happen in the industry that you want it to happen to. If I was working as a terrible pre-reg, that pharmacist that worked in industry wouldn't look at me and think, would you come and cover my maternity leave? She would see somebody who doesn't value her work, and she wouldn't have recommended me. So I think it's really important that while you're trying to get to the next step, don't give up, and just keep pushing and keep going, no matter how many applications it takes, because if it's meant to be yours, you will eventually get there. But also, wherever you are, make sure you're doing your best to the best of your ability and you're doing your job well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you said that, because we do get that sometimes where, we're kind of like, I'm going to leave this anyway. I don't enjoy doing this. Exactly. And you kind of end up doing a sloppy job. Yeah. And you just never know who's watching. You never know who's listening. So I'm always very careful to make sure that, as you said, you're doing the best in the season that you're in, because you just never know, what's coming next. And this position is preparing you for that next one. So thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom. Thank you for the tips. Please make sure you follow Mariam. I'll put all the information in the description box, and make sure you like, share, subscribe, and, share with someone who you think they don't have to be a pharmacist. They might be interested in industry, or even interested in hearing what an industrial pharmacist has to say about, Big Pharma, or, people making money off patients. So please share. Thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye.